Hey everyone, how's it going? This is the bald metal nerd coming at you with the sixth part of my thoughts on the top 100 metal albums ever according to Rolling Stone. And per my usual style, I'm recording this very late at night during the week. And you might be asking yourself, well, don't you have to work tomorrow now that you're no longer unemployed? And well, that's a great question to ask. And in fact, I do have to work tomorrow. But because of the wonderful pandemic, I am currently working from home for the foreseeable future. And that's the beauty of it. I can literally just wake up, I don't know, 5-10 minutes before my workday starts. I don't have a problem. So yeah, I can do this. Yeah, and this is going to be a real niche thing, but if any of you out there are in the IT industry and you've ever worked for any sort of a service provider, and you've ever had to do ConnectWise training, I hope you feel my pain because, man, that is some of the most boring crap one can imagine. But anyway, I'm getting off track here. Let's get to the subject at hand. So basically, when I was going through my other videos, I decided to kind of tally up what I thought of each group of 20 albums, right? It's like, well, I want to quantify this because, you know, if you watch my previous videos, you probably got the feeling that I wasn't completely on board with this list. And I was thinking to myself, well, I need to like quantify this, and what better way than creating a spreadsheet and kind of figuring out several categories that this would fall into with varying levels of me agreeing or disagreeing with the stuff being on the list, and then tallying it up for all of you wonderful folks out there to enjoy, at least the 20 or 30 people who will end up watching this thing. So anyway, um, let's go ahead and dive right into this. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to explain the categories and what they each mean to me. And some of these are going to be pretty self-explanatory. The first category is doesn't belong, not good or significant enough. So basically, that category I think is relatively self-explanatory. Basically, these are albums that I feel um, just exactly what it says. I don't think they were especially good albums, and they were not really historically significant enough to metal, at least to me, and that's why they're in that. I don't necessarily think they're bad albums. They just don't belong anywhere near a top 100 metal albums of all time list, right? So there's that. Here, this category here, on due to music journalism snobbery. That one, I think, really is just the fact that music journalists create this and they like to masturbate in their articles. And I think that's why it's just music journalism wankery, and that's why those albums made it. And a lot of those albums, I just feel completely sucked. Like that Torture Garden or whatever. That was probably the worst one, the biggest example of that. Okay, so now we're getting to you know, what some things that I think belongs on list sort of. So basically, what that means is I'm okay with it being on the list, um, but I think they should have chosen better for those albums, right? I'm like, okay, I can see why this is on the list, but it's maybe not. They could have chosen something else, right? But it's okay that it's on there. The next category is iffy, which this should actually be reversed if we're going with how warm I am to it versus how cold. Iffy means I'm not really sure if it belongs or not. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. I could easily see the argument going either way. And then really belongs on list. Well, that's pretty self-explanatory. That means I really agree with it being on the list because I think it's a really great album, or really significant, or whatever. So we're going to look at the bottom 20 and we're going to look at the numbers and we're going to talk about it. And, you've already read my summary statement here. But I thought the bottom 20 was, well, pretty abysmal, and we're going to go into why. There were 6 albums that just weren't good enough or significant enough. 6 out of 20. That's a bad ratio. 15 on here got on there just because I think Rolling Stone thinks very highly of themselves. So again, shit ratio. We're already the 2 worst categories, and it's already more than half of the bottom 20. We're already up to 11, right? We got one that's kind of iffy. So that's 12 that are like, yeah, I mean, 11 are just terrible. 1, eh. And then we get the 2, quote, better categories. Belongs on list, sort of. 5. So that means, maybe, there were probably better choices for them. And then only of the bottom 20, I only thought 3 were actually worthy to be on this list. That's a really piss poor ratio for the bottom 20. So obviously, I thought the bottom 20 was really, really bad. So yeah, clearly I thought terrible, right? Because that's where that Torture Garden was, and Death Heaven, and there were a few others that were just Sun O, and there was some other band I can't remember that was terrible that was on there. But anyway, moving on. 80 to 61. So next 20. So let's look at the ratio that we had here. A lot better than the first one, because as far as like really what I call bad choices, there were only 4. That's a gigantic improvement over 11 like it was on the last one, right? But on this one, I thought it was kind of there was a lot of just belonged on it, sort of, which meant it was okay, whatever, okay. And there was one that was kind of iffy. So, but only not less than half. I mean, only 9 did I really feel belonged on the list, and that's still less than half. That's still a failing grade, right? So that's still not great. But it was a big improvement over the bottom 20. I will admit it was kind of a much bigger improvement than I thought there was going to be. So, all right, moving on to the next group of 20, 60 to 41. There were, for the first time, we're at a pretty low number for only music snobbery, because in the last one, it was pretty low. We're down to only 1. But we had 7 choices that were, not good or significant enough. So that's 8 albums that I was like, wait a minute, they don't even belong on here, So that's almost half, right? And then as far as, belonged on the list, sort of, like I can kind of see it, only 3, 1 iffy, and then only 8 really belonged on the list. So that's actually, if we look at it, that's a worse ratio than the previous 20, because at least on that one there were 9. On this one there was only 8. So again, not good ratios, right? So now we'll go to the next 20, okay? And on this one, for the first time, we have none that I thought were on there due just to music journalism snobbery, which is good. So we're finally away from that. But there were still a fair amount that weren't good or significant enough, And on this one, as far as belonged on the list, sort of, I thought there was 8, which is okay, I guess. Only 1 iffy, and then only 6 that I thought really deserved to be on the list, which is the worst, which is worse than the last 2 groups of 20. And I thought it was an okay list, this part, but it was so. The problem I thought with 40 to 21 is there was just way too many repeated bands on here, and even though there was a lot of good bands in this, there were just too much of them, and some of their lesser albums were in this, and I'm like, hence why this split up this way. Not the greatest. Still not the greatest. So now we're looking at top 20, right? Okay, so amazingly, not really any negative choices. None that were not good. None that were music journalism snobbery. None that were iffy. This one, if they had actually put a proper album on this one, I would have said it really belonged on the list, right? Instead, I said it was an insult to Motorhead because it was a compilation instead of you know, instead of a actual album, and then two of the albums, I guess I thought were just some of the band's lesser albums that maybe didn't belong on here, or just too many fucking repeats. Again, just way too many fucking repeats in those top 40. So there you go. That is basically breaking down each group of 20. Now we're going to look at the final 20, and I actually did reorder these categories and I'm going to explain why when we get there. So let's go ahead and click on over there. And I basically tried to go from the things that I felt were the most negative to the most positive, right? To try to give this as fair of a grade as I could, right? So, okay, the most negative category I thought was on there was, of course, them being on the list due to music journalism snobbery. And that was 8. That's almost 10% of the list, right? That's pretty bad. That's almost like if this were school, that would cost you almost half of a letter grade, right? So for 8 of them just to be on there for your own journalism masturbation is just ridiculous. And just shows you how pointless some of these magazines are. So, yeah, there's that. Moving on. Doesn't belong, not good or significant enough. 20. That takes it down an entire letter grade, right? If this were school. So they basically 20% of it is just wasted. Just completely wasted on just not good or significant enough albums. Whatever. At least in this one, iffy. I'm right in the middle. I don't think it's good or bad. At least that one was a small number, only 4, right? And yeah, it didn't affect it too much, but and if that had been the only problem with this list, I would have thought, hey, this is a pretty solid list. But clearly, no. And then 25 were belongs on list, sort of. So that's a really bad choice. Well, I mean, not a bad choice, but basically albums that could have been swapped out for other better albums, or albums of other bands. A lot of the sort of were just band repeats. So we've already gone down several letter grades just because of the fact that it does seem like these people just didn't know how to make a list. And then last week we got really belongs on list, and that was 43. So depending on how we grade this list to me is either a D plus or an F, right? If we consider all of these things unacceptable, right? This list only gets 43 out of 100, which is an F, right? But if I'm really, really kind and I give equal credit to belongs on list, sort of, which I wouldn't, that takes it up to a 68, which is a D plus. But if it's only sort of belongs on the list, maybe I should only give it half of 25, right? So I'll even go a little more than half. I'll say 13. So even if I'm really kind, I guess it's still an F because 43 and 13 is 56, and that's still a failing letter grade. So to me, this list pretty much was an F. Just a really, really bad list for a number of reasons, which I'm going to talk about now because, well, you see my notes here. One of the biggest problems, of course, was just way too many repeats. We didn't need to have all 5 of Metallica's, their classic 5. They didn't all have to be on this list. we could have left off one of them at least. As far as which one you would say we should leave off, that's to be decided, right? And Metallica for a really, really long time was my favorite band, but they don't need to have 5 albums on here. Black Sabbath didn't need to have, 5 or 6 albums on here, however many they had. It was just ridiculous. They should have eliminated some of those albums to make room for other bands, which brings us to my next humongous problem with this list, and that was there were way too many omissions. Again, I complained about this in a previous video. No Overkill, no Testament, no Fear Factory, no Iced Earth, no Nevermore. No Creator, no lots and lots and lots and lots of other bands. But yeah, it was no Machine Head. It's like, really, just stupid, just way too many omissions, and it was just, yeah, let's just put the same bands on here 20 times because yeah, that deserves it. Whatever. And I felt there were just way too many bad choices, obviously, because if we have 28 choices that I think are just really, really bad, let's be honest, 32 that are at best questionable, even being really kind. Yeah, that's just crap. It's just crap. It's too many bad choices, and those are, I think, really the 3 main problems with this list. It's just those 3 things. If those issues had been more rectified, I think this would have been a much better list. Probably would have made a lot of metal fans a lot more happy, but whatever. And of the 100 albums on this, I own 34 of them, so I only own slightly more than what's a third on this list, as if anyone really cares, but I just thought I'd throw that factoid in there. So that pretty much does it for my overall thoughts on this list. Please let me know in the comments below if you agree or disagree with this assessment, what you thought of the list. Personally, I feel that it was just another pretty big insult to metal fans because metal gets very little credit or due in the music press outside of the metal music press. Metal gets basically no respect, and it's been that way kind of forever, really. I don't know why. It's really strange because metal had an absolutely gigantic impact on just music overall because even a lot of pop music, after metal became a pretty big force, a lot of pop music got, darker, louder, angrier, so I don't know. I don't know. Just a thought. So again, that's pretty much it. I may be doing some more videos on this with other folks. So just but it would be elsewhere. Wouldn't be here. So that's basically it. So I hope you guys like this. That's it. As always, live long and prosper. Keep on rocking.